Judge Thomas Mallory had seen his fair share of courtroom disputes, but today's case felt different. The defendant, Mariah Williams, appeared confident as she stood before him. She was a businesswoman in her late 30s, impeccably dressed, and had the calm demeanor of someone who had weathered storms before. Yet, despite her poised exterior, there was a nervousness that crept into her eyes, something the judge couldn't quite place. It was as if she was preparing herself for a battle, but it wasn't clear yet who the enemy was. Mariah's business, Williams Consulting, specialized in helping small businesses access federal loans, an incredibly complicated and competitive process. It wasn't the most glamorous work, but it was vital to the lifeblood of countless small enterprises, especially those run by entrepreneurs from disadvantaged backgrounds. However, today, she found herself facing a very different challenge. A technical violation in her business's paperwork had led to the current dispute. She had been accused of failing to renew a required business license on time. Judge Mallory wasn't known for leniency. He ran his courtroom like a well-oiled machine. No room for exceptions, no room for excuses. As he scanned the documents before him, he noted the violation with a sharp eye. According to the law, the fine was clear: a $500 penalty. As a judge who prided himself on upholding the law without bias, he had no reason to believe this case was anything more than a straightforward one. He would make his ruling quickly and move on to the next. "I find that the violation is valid," Judge Mallory announced, his voice cutting through the silence. "The fine of $500 is hereby imposed." Maria's heart sank, though she masked her feelings with a polite nod. She had prepared herself for the possibility of a fine, but it stung nonetheless. This was money she had worked hard for, money that could have gone to fund initiatives to help struggling business owners who relied on her expertise to navigate complex financial systems. As Judge Mallory reached for his gavel, he didn't realize that he had just unknowingly imposed a penalty on someone whose work had done more for the economy of their town than any other case that would come across his desk that year. He didn't know that Maria had been instrumental in securing critical funding for small businesses affected by recent economic downturns. He didn't know that she was part of a network of financial experts who had redesigned the very systems that helped small business owners thrive. But that, as they say, was about to change. Maria Williams was no stranger to adversity. Growing up in a neighborhood where opportunities were scarce, she had always known that hard work and determination were her only ticket to a better future. Her parents, both hardworking immigrants, had taught her the value of perseverance. They had sacrificed everything to give her and her siblings a chance at a life that was more than just surviving. Mariah had excelled in school, fueled by a desire to break free from the limitations imposed by her surroundings. After graduating with honors, Mariah's path took her to a prestigious business school, where she learned not just the mechanics of entrepreneurship, but also the importance of understanding financial systems and economic policies. She knew that in order to make a real impact, she had to understand the rules that govern the business world, especially the ones that often kept people like her, people from underrepresented communities, on the outside looking in. Maria's early years in corporate America had been eye-opening. While she had been grateful for the opportunities, she had quickly realized that the playing field was anything but level. Despite her skills and qualifications, she was frequently passed over for promotions, sidelined in favor of others who fit the traditional corporate mold. It wasn't a surprise. She had seen it before in her own community, but it still stung every time. She couldn't shake the feeling that there had to be a better way to create change, a way to help small business owners who faced the same barrier she had encountered in her own career. That's when Mariah decided to strike out on her own. In 2014, she founded Williams Consulting, a firm dedicated to helping small businesses secure the federal funding they so often struggle to access. It wasn't just about offering advice. It was about reshaping the system itself. Mariah had noticed that many businesses, especially those run by people of color or in economically disadvantaged areas, had difficulty navigating the federal loan application process. There were too many complicated forms, too many barriers, and too few resources to guide them. Her mission was simple: to break down those barriers. Through her firm, she worked with the Small Business Administration, SBA, and other federal agencies to streamline the process, making loans more accessible to those who truly needed them. Maria became a key player in a movement that aimed to level the playing field for small businesses. She helped create new programs and restructured existing ones, ensuring that minority-owned businesses, women-led ventures, and businesses in economically struggling areas could access the funds they needed to grow. Her success didn't come without challenges. There were constant roadblocks, from bureaucratic red tape to skeptical lawmakers. But Maria was driven by a passion for change that kept her going. She knew that her work was making a difference, and that kept her motivated, even when the going got tough. Judge Mallory had no idea that the woman standing before him, facing a simple licensing fine, was quietly reshaping the landscape of federal small business loans, and doing it with a commitment that few could match. After the fine was handed down, Maria walked out of the courtroom with a quiet determination, trying to push away the sting of what had just happened. She wasn't angry with the judge. She knew how the legal system worked. It was more of a reminder of the battle she fought every day, a battle to prove that her work mattered, that she was more than just the sum of bureaucratic mistakes. Yet, as she left the courthouse, she couldn't help but feel a bit defeated. She had given so much to help small businesses, only to be met with a fine over a paperwork oversight. Little did she know, the story wasn't over. Across town, a local journalist named Olivia Hartman, who had been covering financial policy and the economy, was working on a piece about the federal small business loan reforms that had been introduced in the wake of recent economic crisis. Olivia had been following the work of experts and consultants who had played a pivotal role in restructuring the loan programs. One name stood out to her more than the rest: Maria Williams. The journalist had heard the buzz surrounding Maria's work, but hadn't realized the full extent of it until she stumbled upon an article that mentioned Maria's involvement in recent changes to SBA loan programs. Olivia immediately saw an opportunity for a deeper story. Intrigued, Olivia dug deeper into Maria's background. She learned that Maria wasn't just any business consultant. She had been working directly with the Small Business Administration, SBA, to revamp the loan application process. Her consultancy had become one of the primary forces pushing for the simplification of paperwork and the implementation of more inclusive financial support systems. Maria's efforts had been instrumental in securing funding for thousands of small businesses, especially those located in underprivileged areas. In fact, a recent federal grant Maria had helped orchestrate had provided millions in relief to businesses that were suffering due to economic downturns. As Olivia continued her research, she made a startling discovery. Maria's name kept popping up not just in local circles, but at the national level. She had consulted with lawmakers, contributed to legislative revisions, and been a part of crucial advisory boards aimed at securing small business loans for minority and women entrepreneurs. Her work had directly impacted the way the government allocated funding to those who were most in need, those who often fell through the cracks of traditional funding systems. Olivia couldn't believe it. The woman who had just been fined for a business license issue was, in fact, one of the most influential forces in the financial world today. The journalist was eager to tell this story, the story of an underdog who had been quietly making waves while navigating a system that wasn't built for people like her. As the article took shape, Olivia knew it would change the public's perception of Maria, and perhaps even that of the judge who had so swiftly fined her. What no one knew was that this article would soon find its way to the very courtroom where Maria's fate had just been decided. Judge Thomas Mallory sat alone in his office later that afternoon, sorting through his paperwork after a long day of hearings. He was about to close his desk drawer when something caught his eye. A headline from the local newspaper lay on his desk, the words in bold print staring back at him: "Local consultant reshaping federal loan programs for small businesses." He paused, confused for a moment. The name at the top of the article sent a jolt through him: Maria Williams. He picked up the newspaper and began to read, his brow furrowing as he absorbed the details. The article described Mariah as a leading consultant working to overhaul small business loan programs at the national level, particularly through the Small Business Administration. It outlined her role in advocating for more accessible loan processes, especially for businesses in underrepresented communities. The story painted Mariah as an unsung hero in the fight for economic equality, someone who had helped secure millions in federal funding for small businesses in dire need of assistance. The revelation hit Judge Mallory like a ton of bricks. How could he have not known about this? Here was a woman who had been instrumental in restructuring government programs, ensuring that businesses like the ones he'd seen in his own town could get back on their feet. And yet he had fined her, assuming her violation was nothing more than a simple mistake, nothing more than a technical issue, as he dismissed it in court. Mallory's thoughts began to swirl as the pieces of the puzzle started to fall into place. He had followed the rules, he had acted as any judge would, but now he realized that his decision was made in ignorance. He had assumed that Mariah, the defendant before him, was just another small business owner who had made a mistake. But the truth was far more complicated. He now saw how his ruling had been both narrow-minded and superficial, overlooking the immense contributions Mariah had made, contributions that were directly tied to the well-being of local businesses and the broader economy. The more Mallory thought about it, the more he felt a sinking feeling of regret. He had been so quick to make his judgment, so ready to follow procedure without truly understanding the bigger picture. In his pursuit of maintaining order in his courtroom, he had overlooked the very essence of fairness. Maria Williams was not just a business owner with a minor infraction. She was a driving force behind the federal loan system, helping to dismantle the barriers that often kept marginalized entrepreneurs from succeeding. A wave of discomfort washed over Judge Mallory as he read the final lines of the article, which noted that Maria was currently working on a major new initiative to assist businesses affected by the latest financial crisis. He couldn't help but wonder if his fine had done more than just penalize her. It had also sent the wrong message. Sitting back in his chair, Mallory realized he had to do something about it. He needed to make things right. The days following the article's publication were a blur for Mariah. She had received dozens of calls and messages congratulating her for the article, but it was a bittersweet feeling. The story's spotlight on her work was uplifting, but the memory of the fine still stung. She had always known her work was important, but the courtroom experience had felt like a personal blow, a reminder that even those who tried to change the system often became trapped within it. Then, one afternoon, her phone rang. The number on the screen was unfamiliar, and as she answered, a deep, somewhat apologetic voice greeted her. "Ms. Williams, this is Judge Thomas Mallory," the voice said. "I hope I'm not catching you at a bad time." Maria's heart skipped a beat. She had expected this moment to come in some form. After all, the fine was wrong, and she had expected the judge to eventually take notice. But hearing his voice now, after everything, was still unexpected. She leaned against the desk, collecting her thoughts before responding. "I'm listening, Judge," she replied carefully, trying to keep her tone neutral. "I wanted to reach out personally and apologize," he continued. "I've been reading up on your work, and I realized that my decision in court was made without understanding the full context. I made a mistake, and I owe you an apology." Maria paused, taken aback. In all her years of working with legal and financial systems, she had never once expected an apology from someone in power, especially not a judge. But here it was, offered without hesitation. "I appreciate your apology," she said slowly, still processing the sincerity in his voice. "But Judge, I didn't expect this to be a matter of personal feelings. I understand how the system works, just like I understand that it's easy for someone in your position to view me as just another business owner trying to cut corners." "That's exactly it," Mallory responded. "I didn't see you for who you truly are. I didn't see how much you've contributed, and I misjudged you. I should have taken the time to understand the impact you've made, not just the paperwork you filed." There was a long silence on the line. Mariah knew the judge was speaking from a place of genuine regret, but she also knew how rare it was for someone in his position to admit such a mistake. "I'd like to meet with you," Judge Mallory said after a pause. "In person, if you're open to it. I'd like to learn more about your work. I think there's more I can do to support what you're trying to accomplish, and I'd want to make things right." Mariah considered the offer. There was something honest in his tone, and despite the weight of the fine still hanging over her, she felt that this could be the start of something constructive. "All right, Judge," she said. "I'll meet with you." And just like that, a small moment of humility had the potential to open up a new chapter. The meeting between Judge Mallory and Mariah Williams took place in a quiet cafe, away from the formalities of courtrooms and legal proceedings. When Mariah arrived, she was surprised to find the judge sitting at a corner table, his usual stern demeanor softened. He greeted her with a warm handshake and a genuine smile. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with me, Ms. Williams," he said as they sat down. "I realize I've made some assumptions that were far from accurate, and I want to understand more about the work you do. I owe it to you and to the community to listen." Mariah nodded, but didn't immediately respond. She had heard many apologies before, often from people who were quick to apologize but slow to change. She wasn't sure where this meeting would go, but she was open to seeing what the judge had to offer. As they settled into the conversation, she decided to start with the basics. "I run a small consulting firm that helps businesses navigate the complexities of securing federal loans. But it's not just about filing paperwork. It's about making sure the systems we have in place are accessible and fair to everyone. Many small business owners, especially those from disadvantaged communities, face barriers, things like outdated forms, bureaucratic delays, and a general lack of support in understanding the rules," Mariah explained. Judge Mallory listened intently, his eyes focused on her as she spoke. He had expected a brief description of her work, but hearing it directly from her, he began to realize the depth of what she had done. She wasn't just helping people apply for loans. She was reshaping the very foundation of the financial system that many people, especially those in underrepresented communities, had never been able to fully access. "As I was reading about your work," Mallory said, "I started to realize that you've been fighting an uphill battle. It's not just about getting businesses the money they need. It's about changing the rules for an entire sector. I didn't understand that before. I didn't see how someone like you, helping to create those changes, could be reduced to a case about a missed license renewal." Mariah smiled faintly, grateful for his acknowledgement but still cautious. "It's easy for people to view you through the lens of one isolated moment, like that fine. They don't see the bigger picture, the years of work it takes to make real change." Judge Mallory nodded, leaning forward. "I want to change that. I've been thinking a lot about the role I play in these systems. I've always considered myself someone who upholds the law, but now I see that laws themselves are sometimes flawed. I realize that the decisions I make in this courtroom don't just impact individuals, they ripple out into communities, into industries." It was an admission that Mariah hadn't expected, but she appreciated it. The judge wasn't just apologizing for his earlier decision. He was reflecting on his own role within a larger system that often overlooked the very people Mariah had dedicated her life to helping. "So, what can I do?" Mallory asked. "How can I help you help more people?" Mariah thought for a moment. This was the turning point she hadn't seen coming. The chance to potentially partner with someone who had the power to influence more than just one case. "We need more allies in positions like yours," she said, her voice steady but hopeful. "We need judges, legislators, and community leaders who understand the challenges that small businesses face. If you want to help, you can start by raising awareness, by advocating for change in your own circles, ensuring that the voices of entrepreneurs from all backgrounds are heard." Mallory absorbed her words, nodding slowly. "Consider it done." That moment marked the beginning of something neither of them had anticipated, a shared understanding of the challenges facing small business owners and an unexpected partnership that would pave the way for further change. What had begun as a simple courtroom mistake was now transforming into a collaborative effort that could impact far more than just one individual's case. In the weeks that followed their meeting, Judge Mallory and Mariah worked together in unexpected ways. Mallory took her suggestions to heart, diving deeper into the world of small business support and listening to community leaders who had long advocated for financial reform. He began attending meetings with local chambers of commerce, speaking with small business owners about their challenges and needs. For the first time, he began to see the world through their eyes, understanding not just the technicalities of law, but the human stories behind the numbers. Maria, for her part, remained focused on her work, helping small businesses access crucial funding, guiding them through complex paperwork, and ensuring they had the resources to survive in an unpredictable economy. But now, she had a powerful ally in the courtroom. She no longer felt like an isolated voice advocating for change. She felt like part of a broader movement, one that could influence local policies, challenge outdated systems, and create lasting reform. One day, while sitting in her office, Mariah received a call from Mallory. "Mariah," he said, "I've been talking with some lawmakers about the issues you raised. There's an opportunity to push for changes in the way the SBA reviews loan applications. We're looking at revising some outdated procedures that are making it harder for minority-owned businesses to get the support they need. I'd like you to come down and speak about your experiences." Mariah couldn't believe what she was hearing. She had always known that true change would require getting into the room where decisions were made. But hearing that Judge Mallory, who had once been a stranger to her cause, was actively advocating for the very reforms she had fought for, was a powerful reminder of the impact one person's perspective could have. The next week, Mariah found herself sitting in a state legislative hearing, sharing her story with a room full of lawmakers. Mallory sat beside her, acting as a bridge between her work and the legislative process. He wasn't just a judge anymore. He was an advocate for reform, someone who understood the urgency of making the SBA's processes more inclusive and efficient for small business owners. As Maria spoke, she was struck by how much had changed since that day in court. What had seemed like a simple misunderstanding was now the catalyst for a much larger conversation. She could see that her work, and the efforts of those who shared her vision, had reached a tipping point. What once seemed like a hopeless battle against a rigid system was beginning to shift, and with Mallory's support, it was gaining momentum. "We have the chance to make real change here," Mariah said, her voice steady but filled with conviction. "This is about more than just paperwork. It's about creating an environment where small businesses, especially those owned by minorities, women, and people from underserved communities, can thrive." The room fell silent as her words resonated with the lawmakers. Even those who had initially been skeptical began to nod in agreement. It was a pivotal moment, a moment where the system was being challenged by those who had once been on the outside looking in. For Judge Mallory, it was a realization that his role as a judge could extend beyond the courtroom. He had the power to influence change, not just through legal decisions, but by pushing for reform, by creating space for voices like Maria's to be heard. Together, they were no longer fighting individual battles. They were working to reshape the future for countless small business owners, giving them the chance to succeed in a world that had long turned a blind eye to their struggles. As the months passed, the alliance between Mariah and Judge Mallory continued to grow, and their combined efforts began to yield tangible results. The legislative hearing where Mariah had spoken was just the beginning. With Mallory's support, they had made significant progress in revising the SBA's loan application process, introducing measures to simplify documentation, reduce bureaucratic delays, and ensure that underserved communities had a clearer path to access financial resources. But their work wasn't just limited to policy changes. Maria and Mallory also worked together to organize workshops and informational sessions for small business owners, teaching them how to navigate the newly restructured loan processes. Mariah's consulting firm, once a small operation focused on a handful of clients, had expanded to offer nationwide services. With the changes they had pushed for, Her firm was now helping thousands of entrepreneurs across the country, especially those from marginalized communities, get the support they needed. One day, Mariah received a call from an unexpected source, someone from the SBA. "Ms. Williams, I just wanted to inform you that a new initiative has been launched that directly incorporates the changes you've been advocating for. We're calling it the Accessible Business Loan Program, and it's designed to streamline the process for minority-owned businesses." Mariah couldn't help but smile. This was the kind of systemic change she had dreamed of, the kind that would have a long-lasting impact on small business owners for years to come. It wasn't just about financial assistance. It was about leveling the playing field for those who had always struggled to gain a foothold in the business world. At a celebratory event later that year, Maria was honored by local community leaders for her contributions to small business reform. The ceremony was filled with small business owners, entrepreneurs, and lawmakers who had worked alongside her in pushing for these changes. As Maria took the stage to accept the award, she was joined by Judge Mallory, who had been instrumental in advocating for many of the legislative shifts. The applause was deafening, and Mariah felt a deep sense of pride. She had never set out to be a hero, but today she stood among those who had made a difference, not just for themselves, but for countless others. Judge Mallory, standing next to her, took the microphone. "I never imagined when I first met Mariah that she would change the way I viewed my role in the justice system. But through her work, I've learned that being a judge is about more than just ruling on cases. It's about being a part of a broader effort to create a fairer, more just society. Maria's vision has inspired me, and I'm proud to be part of this movement with her." Maria looked at him, a soft smile playing on her lips. "We've only just begun," she said, her voice steady but filled with hope. "The work we're doing is just the start of something much bigger. The real change happens when we all come together, when we fight not just for our own success, but for the success of others." As the applause grew louder, Mariah and Judge Mallory stood side by side, knowing that their partnership had created a ripple effect that was reaching far beyond the courtroom and the legislative halls. They had set in motion a movement, one that would continue to build, change lives, and shape the future for generations to come.